think, 685 or 6 from World War II that are MIAs. And this was all, I mean, we should know about this. Any man or woman in the United States who decides to put on a uniform and serve their country should know that there's always the possibility, or at least there was at that time anyway, no guarantee that their government's going to do everything it says it's going to do when you sign that contract. I mean, to me, it's unconscionable. It's unconscionable that that was kept from us.
Let me jump in and ask you this question.
Sure.
Are you one that believes that there are still living missing in action here in Vietnam? Or prisoners of war?
Can I qualify that? I do not believe, in my opinion, everything that I've seen and the people that I know that are expatriates that are living freely over here in Southeast Asia, I don't believe the Vietnamese government, as a matter of course, is holding anyone. I think it would be political suicide for them to do so, economic suicide for them to do so, and I think they realize that. It is possible that some of the tribes, and I've talked about this with Senator Kerry, and I've got him on tape, it's possible that some of the tribes, that there are some people, the movie A Man Called Horse, you become property, you become a status symbol. You have to understand there are so many, there are not only is the culture very different than ours, but within this culture over here, there are real subtleties between different groups and different philosophies. And there could be some of those people. I doubt that you'll find any alive. I do believe that there are 50 to 60 who, when their tour was up, a guy that was maybe wanted to marry a girl that he fell in love with and maybe was going to father a child, and Army said, no, you can't marry and take her home. He said, okay, and yeah, he was due to go home the next day and get out. He just didn't go home. I think there are probably 21 deserters over here. But these are figures that Kerry will say, excuse me, Senator Kerry, John Kerry will say, well, I don't want to put a finite number on that. And I said to him one time, well, I heard 126, and he said, I don't want to put a finite number on that. And I think that what John Kerry and Bob Smith, I think what they're doing is good, because I think that we're going to get something besides pablum and fluff. At the March 28 meeting at Charlestown Navy Yard in Boston, we heard from Carl Ford, we heard from Sheets, we heard from this one, we heard from that one, but we didn't really hear anything. All we heard was pablum. In fact, you know what we really heard? We heard bull feces. That's what we heard.
And but what are they saying that leads you to say this?
Well,
what do you want them to tell you?
Well, to the truth, Brian. The truth is that nobody really knows. But the fact of the matter is that there is within the realm of possibility, that possibility, if you know what I mean, that it's possible. But I don't believe it's possible. But you're not going to
believe it's possible that there are...
I don't believe that there's anyone certainly being held against their will.
Okay, let me jump quickly, though, to another issue, and I know you're not a politician, but because this is something that's talked about here constantly, should the trade embargo be lifted by the United States with Vietnam?
Sure. I agree with Bernard Cardinal Law, who's the head of the ODP program.
Cardinal of Boston.
Archbishop of Boston. He was here last August. In fact, we covered his Mass at the Hanoi Cathedral. And we talked about this, and he said, if you keep punishing a people, look at these kids. You keep punishing these, they don't know anything about what went on over here 25 and 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 19 years ago. What do you achieve by punishing these people and by keeping it closed? What did I give you at breakfast this morning? Trade embargo's a joke. We can take our sick little boys here, we can go down any one of these shopping streets, malls, right? And you can buy Coca-Cola, you can buy every American product under the sun over here. How does it get here? You can go to the International Club, and there's a wonderful guy from the Philippines, he's the manager. Does he own it? No, it's owned by a couple of guys in New York City. I gave you a bar palm olive soap, didn't I? It was in my bathroom at the hotel. Right?
What's your hotel like, by the way?
It's comfortable. It's a Vietnamese hotel. I go native.
What do you pay?
$20 a night.
Who sets it up for you?
I did.
But again, if you go back to, can an individual, you talked about a group of 24 traveling here, can an individual come here on their own and travel around as a tourist?
Yeah, but you've got to do it through a tourist agency. You've got to get put on some sort of an itinerary, that sort of thing.
Is there a recommendation you have if somebody's listening that they can place a telephone call to a certain, I don't care where it is, and they say, I want to start the process, I want to go back? Who do they call? Is it an American tourist travel agency?
remember, we have no diplomatic relations with the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, all right? But I use the Norwell Travel Agency in Norwell, Mass. 617-659-1592. Is that okay?
Yes, sure.
Because I gave Lynn, I brought her back not only a Hanoi map, but some of the tourist information stuff. And if you're a vet, for instance, and you want to come back.
How many vets are there, by the way, from Vietnam?
The number varies, but there's at least 2.5 million who served in combat in Vietnam. About the same number who served in combat in World War II. Yeah. But yes, it can be done. And can you do it individually? Sure, but it's a lot harder. When I came here last time, Mr. Kwok set me up with this hotel, and I came back and went to it on my own because I was so well treated.
What did you pay for your meals?
Well, breakfast cost me anywhere from. Yesterday, I ran this lake yesterday for the first time in a long time, and I spent a lot for breakfast. I spent $2.58.
What are we sitting at? What are these things?
This is a siklo. Bao, siklo.
Yeah.
How you say siklo? Siklo? Siklo.
What's a siklo?
It's a pedicab. It's a rickshaw like a bicycle where the guy's in the back and they drive us.
What's it cost to ride one?
The going rate if you're European over here is $1 an hour. Or if you're taking just a real short trip or something, get some bundles, you negotiate that.
What kind of money do you use here?
Use dong, or you can use dollars. You can use dollars anywhere.
How many dong to the dollar?
I think today's rate's 11,300.
So what kind of life do these folks have?
It's better than it was, but it's still not all that good. You've got the United Nations over here doing with Finland and Australia, doing a potable water thing to try to restore to Hanoi a decent fresh water system. You travel throughout the north today, you'll still find streets in Hanoi where buildings are still bombed out. And you go to Haiphong, it's a little more, it's less subtle.
Haiphong is where?
Haiphong is Vietnam's port city, river city to the north. And when I was there in August, the #1 man in the city province of Haiphong, it's one of the 3 areas in Vietnam that enjoys a special status. It's not only a city, it's also a province. And they had just found a couple of more live ones out there left over from the war.
Now, what do you do every day while you're here?
Well, I came over primarily this time because there's a big shakeup in the POW-MIA office here. And
Our POW.
Yes, right. And it used to be a part of the JCRC, which is the Joint Casualty Resolution Center. Now it's part of the Joint Task Force. It's been taken over. There's a brigadier general, a fellow by the name of Tom Needham from Massachusetts, who's in command. I believe he's airborne. And Bill Bell, who was the chief here, who was, according to Kyle Ford and a few other people, a national treasure, because he's not only fluent, and I mean totally fluent, conversant, reads, speaks, and writes the Vietnamese and all the principal dialects, North, Central, South. He's also that way with the Thai language, the Lao language, and I believe he's conversant in Kampuchean or Cambodian. And he was replaced by a really nice guy, by the way, Jack Donovan from Newton, Mass. And so it's kind of changed.
How many Americans are here in this kind of, these are government employees of the United States?
They used to be. Now it's military as well.
Here in this town?
I don't have a list yet, but Jack was going to give me a list because when I call ODS tonight, well, I'm going to say hello to the people back there on behalf of these guys. But I think there's, let's see, Bob Stark, there's Bill Bell, there's Dr. Peter Miller, who's the forensic anthropologist, Jack, I think there's probably 8 or 9 here right now at the Boss Hotel. What they do is they coordinate the efforts to search, to explore, and to investigate the burial place and of possible American POWs that are still missing. They have a small forensic laboratory here, and when people sometimes bring in remains, they allege are American or whatever, Dr. Miller will look at them and he will make a determination whether they need to go back to Hawaii or not, because they are either Caucasoid American, Afro-Asian American, or Afro-American or Asian American. And once he makes that determination that he thinks they are, then they go back for a full examination at the forensic laboratories in Hawaii.
As a veteran, is the American government doing everything it should be doing to solve this problem?
No.
What more would you want them to do?
Well, for one thing, they're about 10 to 15, maybe 20 years too damn late. And they shouldn't be playing politics with the American psyche and the emotions of the American people.
Who's playing politics?
They all are.
How? I mean, when do you hear someone make a political statement that you say, stop the politics?
You know, I think Ambassador Khan can answer that better than I can if I may quote him.
Ambassador Khan is, again?
The Deputy Permanent Representative from Vietnam to the United Nations. When we had our meeting and when he decided that he would extend an invitation for me to come over last fall, we sat in Richard Fuchs' house at the Parsonage of First Parish Church in Norwell. Dick Fuchs, Bob Detweiler, Helen Graves from the Brockton Enterprise, myself and the Ambassador Khan. And he made this observation, and he wasn't being, and he was just candid. He said, it never ceases to amaze us. An American politician, a congressman, will come to Vietnam, and they will come over. And then they will go back, and there will be this big announcement and this big statement. The Vietnamese government has agreed to do this. The Vietnamese government has agreed to do that. He says, what really I find hard to understand is that our position hasn't changed since the Paris Peace Accords. He says, and always this happens right around the time they do for re-election. And
but what I want to get to is, what do veterans want? In other words, if it's such a political thing, what are politicians afraid of? If they say this will happen? I mean, are veterans going to oppose them?
No, I think that a lot of veterans feel that there's been a real cover-up as to the fate of at least some of those American service members who have disappeared here in Southeast Asia or are MIAs. And I think that there's been testimony November the 6th. I think Bill Bell stated that there was overwhelming, circumstantial as it may be, there was overwhelming evidence to indicate that we left knowingly 10 or 12 people at such and such an area. I think he even gave the grid square in the hands of the enemy, knowing full well, and I don't know why, political expediency, whatever. But Bill Bell's relief caused John Kerry to write Cheney, and I gave you a copy of that letter, which I got as a blind copy in the mail. You have that letter, in which Secretary Cheney was queried by Senator Kerry as to why Bill Bell was being relieved and why the change in the structure over here. And was it because his testimony was so candid, so open, so forthright? And if so, what does that say to anyone else that might want to come before the committee and give candid, open testimony?
But for those who don't understand all the little intricacies of the people involved, I guess I want to ask, or try to get some kind of a sense of what has to be done for someone like you and other veterans to be not happy, but less critical. I mean, what would make you feel good about this?
Well, it's got to be open, Brian, and you can't have it open. You've got to have things have to be normal. You can't be working or trying to resolve an issue that's so painful for the American psyche as this is, and emotionally for American veterans as this is. And by the way, I went to Australia in 1990, and I stayed with the people I stayed with when I was an R&R there from Vietnam. And I met with George Lyons, who was the head of the ex-servicemen's club in Cootamundra in New South Wales. He's a Vietnam vet. There is a correlation between the problems that are being, or that the Australian Vietnam vet is suffering. They're the same as that our Vietnam vets are suffering, and the 40,000 Canadians who served in American uniforms during the Vietnam War are having, the same correlation exists there too. And I think Vietnam vets are really upset because between March the 28th, 1973, when our, quote, combat role ended, and January the 1st, 1984, according to Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who was in on a special grant from the national government to do research into the dream study, said 102,000 Vietnam vets had committed suicide since the war ended.